Security, remove her from my operating room." Dr. Everett Hale did not look away from the open chest on the table when he said it. His gloved hands remained suspended above the damaged artery, while two armed hospital officers moved toward the black woman standing near the operating room doors. "Do not place that clamp," the woman warned. Her voice was controlled, but every monitor in the room seemed to answer for her. "You clamp above that tier, the pressure will split the artery behind the heart. He will bleed out before you can reopen him." Hale finally looked up. The woman was wearing dark jeans, a rain-soaked sweater and sneakers stained with mud. No surgical cap covered her short natural curls, no white coat announced a title, and no expensive badge told him she belonged among the hospital's most important physicians. To Hale, the evidence was already complete. "You wandered into a restricted surgical suite during an emergency," he said. "You have interrupted my team twice, and now you are attempting to give medical instructions you are not qualified to understand." "I understand that injury better than anyone in this building." A few people in the room stopped breathing. The patient on the table was Governor Michael Grant, a nationally known reform politician whose motorcade had crashed less than 40 minutes earlier. His blood pressure was falling, his chest was filling with blood, and every television station in the state was already gathering outside St. Catherine Crown Medical Center. Hale pointed toward the doors. "Take her out." One officer reached for the woman's wrist. She pulled her arm away before he touched her. "I will walk," she said, "but when his pressure collapses, do not waste time pretending you were not warned." Hale gave a thin smile behind his mask. "I have performed more than 3,000 cardiac procedures. I do not take surgical advice from people who walk in from the street." The doors closed behind her. Hale placed the clamp. For 1 second nothing happened. Then the arterial pressure disappeared. The monitor screamed, the surgical field flooded red, and the anesthesiologist shouted that the governor had no measurable pulse. Hale froze. Outside the glass doors, the woman turned around slowly. She looked through the window at the chaos, took a phone from her pocket, and called a number that rang directly inside the hospital command center. "This is Dr. Naomi Carter," she said. "Activate emergency executive privileges in operating room 4. The administrator on the other end went silent. Naomi watched Hale struggle to control the bleeding. "And notify the board," she continued. "Their chief of cardiac surgery just removed the hospital's new chief medical officer from the room while she was trying to save the governor." Have you ever seen a man realize that the person he humiliated was the only person standing between him and disaster? Because Dr. Everett Hale was about to learn that arrogance has a pulse, and sometimes it stops. To understand how the most protected surgeon in the state reached that operating table, the story had to go back 90 minutes. At 6:42 on a stormy Thursday morning, Dr. Naomi Carter was sitting inside a 24-hour diner across from St. Catherine Crown Medical Center. She was helping her 12-year-old daughter, Maya, rebuild a volcano. The original volcano had collapsed inside the trunk of Naomi's car when a truck cut in front of them on the freeway. Red food coloring, baking soda, and pieces of painted cardboard now covered a booth that smelled like coffee, syrup, and wet coats. "You said you knew how to build one," Maya said. "I know how to repair human hearts. You also said that was harder." "It usually is." Maya held up a piece of cardboard. "Then why does this look like a crushed birthday hat?" Naomi studied the volcano with the seriousness of a surgeon reviewing an X-ray. "The patient has structural complications. The patient is ugly. That is not medically relevant." Maya tried not to laugh, but she did. It was the sound Naomi had been working to protect for 12 years. Naomi Carter was 44 years old, a cardiothoracic surgeon, a biomedical researcher, and the creator of an emergency technique that had changed how hospitals treated one of the deadliest forms of traumatic heart injury. In medical journals, the procedure was called the Carter Temporary Bridge. In emergency rooms, doctors simply called it the Carter Bridge. The technique gave surgeons several extra minutes when a torn artery was positioned too close to the heart for a normal clamp. Those minutes were often the difference between a patient leaving the hospital and never leaving the operating table. Naomi had taught the procedure in Boston, Chicago, Houston, Lowe's Angels in 3 countries overseas. She had never taught it at St. Catherine Crown. That was going to change. 11 days earlier, the hospital board had voted unanimously to appoint her chief medical officer of the entire St. Catherine Health System. She would oversee clinical standards at 7 hospitals, 42 outpatient centers, and one of the largest private medical networks in the country. The public announcement was scheduled for noon that day. Only the board, the chief executive, and a small legal team knew she had accepted. Naomi had requested the secrecy herself. She wanted to spend her first morning walking through the hospital without ceremony, cameras, or a line of administrators explaining how excellent everything was. She wanted to see how nurses were treated when no one important was watching, how long elderly patients waited for blankets, and whether residents were allowed to speak when senior doctors were wrong. Hospitals, she believed, revealed themselves in the minutes before they knew someone powerful had entered the building. Her clothes were part of the plan. No tailored suit, no driver, and no executive badge hanging from her neck. She wore a navy sweater, jeans, and an old pair of running shoes because she had spent the previous evening at a community clinic where flooding had damaged the roof. She had worked until nearly midnight helping the clinic staff move equipment away from the leaking ceiling. The mud on her shoes came from carrying boxes through the parking lot. Her executive credential was inside her purse. Her old medical badge, the one she had used as a surgical fellow 15 years earlier, was clipped inside her jacket. Maya placed a paper cup into the center of the volcano. "Are you nervous about today?" Naomi adjusted the cardboard around it. "I have spoken in front of 8,000 doctors. That was not my question." Naomi looked at her daughter. Children had a way of asking for the truth without giving adults enough room to escape. "Yes," she admitted, "I am nervous. Because you are going to be everybody's boss. Because I will be responsible when people make mistakes." Maya frowned. "Isn't the person who makes the mistake responsible? They are responsible for the choice. Leadership is responsible for the system that taught them what they could get away with." Maya considered that. It was a large sentence for a 12-year-old, but she had grown up around hospital language and late-night phone calls. "Then make a system where they cannot get away with bad things." Naomi smiled. "That is the plan." Her phone vibrated beside the coffee. A message from St. Catherine's chief executive, Richard Bellamy, appeared on the screen. "Board arriving at 10:30. Press room ready. Hale requesting front row seat." He still no. Naomi read the last sentence twice. Dr. Everett Hale was chief of cardiac surgery at St. Catherine Crown and the hospital's most famous physician. His face appeared on highway billboards, charity brochures, and advertisements promising world-class care. He had been considered for Naomi's new position. According to 2 board members, Hale believed the position was already his. Richard Bellamy had wanted to inform him before the announcement, but Naomi had advised against it. She wanted the appointment judged on its own, without giving Hale time to organize resistance or pressure the board. There was another reason. During the final interview process, Naomi had reviewed internal staff surveys. One department stood out. Cardiac surgery had the hospital's highest revenue, best public reputation, and lowest staff confidence score. Junior doctors described a culture of intimidation. Nurses reported being ignored during safety concerns, and several women had written that speaking against Hale could end a career. The complaints had produced no formal findings. Hale's surgical results were excellent. His donors were wealthy, and his patients included judges, athletes, executives, and politicians. Every concern disappeared somewhere between human resources and the office of Chief Operating Officer Martin Kessler. Naomi had not accused anyone yet. She believed in evidence. That morning was supposed to help her find it. Maya covered the volcano with green paper. "Will you be home for the science fair? Front row. You said that about the winter concert. There was an emergency transplant. And the basketball game. There was a second emergency transplant. And Grandma's birthday dinner." Naomi lowered her eyes. "That one was my fault." Maya pressed the paper into place. "The fair starts at 6. My volcano goes off at 6:30 unless it dies again. It will not die. You are not allowed to get called into surgery. I am becoming an administrator." Maya gave her a look. "You are still you." Naomi placed one hand over her heart. Front row by 6, I promise. At 7:03, Naomi's younger brother arrived to take Maya to school. Marcus Carter was a high school history teacher who believed every conversation could be improved with a historical comparison. He looked at the repaired volcano and shook his head. Pompeii deserved better. It is a scientific model, Naomi said. It is an insult to geology. Maya grabbed her backpack. Make sure she comes tonight. Marcus looked at his sister. You heard the scientist. Naomi kissed Maya's forehead. Front row. Maya headed toward the door then stopped. Mom, yes. When people find out you are the new boss, are they going to act different? Naomi looked through the diner window at the hospital across the street. Some of them. Then how will you know who is actually nice? That, Naomi said, is why they do not know yet. Maya accepted the answer and left. Naomi remained at the booth for one more minute. From her purse, she removed a small plastic card protected inside a clear sleeve. It was not a medical badge. It was a handwritten hospital visitor card dated 27 years earlier. The ink had faded, but Naomi could still read her mother's name. Lorraine Carter, Emergency Department. 11:48 p.m. Lorraine had arrived at a different hospital complaining of crushing chest pain and numbness in her left arm. She was 41, black, uninsured, and wearing the uniform of a hotel housekeeper. The triage note described her as anxious. She waited 3 hours. By the time a doctor ordered the correct test, the damage to her heart was irreversible. Naomi was 17 years old when her mother died. The physician later told the family that Lorraine's symptoms had been atypical. Naomi had read the chart herself years later. The symptoms had not been atypical. The attention had been inadequate. Naomi carried the visitor card whenever she started a new job. It reminded her that medicine did not fail only through lack of knowledge. Sometimes it failed because the right person spoke and the wrong person decided not to listen. She returned the card to her purse. Then she crossed the street toward the hospital that would belong to her decisions by noon. St. Catherine Crown rose above the city in glass and pale stone. Its lobby contained a waterfall, a grand piano, and enough polished marble to make illness look expensive. Naomi entered through the public doors at 7:18. No one recognized her. That was the point. A security guard glanced at her muddy shoes, then at the floor she had crossed. Ma'am, delivery entrance is around the side. I am not making a delivery. Contract staff check-in downstairs. I am not contract staff. The guard looked at the large canvas bag on her shoulder. It contained Maya's broken glue gun, 2 medical journals, and a pair of executive shoes Naomi planned to wear at the press conference. Visitors need a patient name, he said. I am meeting Richard Bellamy. The guard almost smiled. The chief executive. Yes. Do you have an appointment? Naomi checked her watch. In approximately 3 hours. Then you can wait in the public area. Naomi could have shown her executive credential. She did not. The guard was not rude, only dismissive. There was a difference, and leaders who treated every uncomfortable interaction as a personal attack learned nothing useful. Where is the nearest staff elevator? She asked. Employees only. Thank you. She walked toward the cafe. The guard watched her leave, then returned to his phone. Naomi wrote his badge number inside a small notebook, not for punishment, for training. At the cafe, a nurse in blue scrubs was buying 2 coffees and trying to balance a stack of patient files against her hip. Naomi reached for the top file before it fell. Thank you, the nurse said. Her badge read Lena Brooks, RN, cardiac surgery. You are starting early, Naomi said. I started yesterday. Lena looked exhausted, but her smile was real. 14-hour shift, 16 and counting, mandatory overtime, voluntary according to the schedule, mandatory according to what happens if I say no. Naomi handed her the file. Who makes that decision? Lena glanced around. You knew here, in a way. Then my professional answer is that staffing decisions are made according to patient needs. And the honest answer is Dr. Hale wants the same people around him because we know how he works. If someone calls out, the rest of us stay. Does administration know? Lena laughed once. Administration knows how much money his department makes. Before Naomi could ask another question, a resident hurried into the cafe. He was tall, thin, and looked young enough to be borrowing the white coat he wore. Lena, he moved the valve case up 30 minutes. He cannot. The blood products are not ready. He said readiness is a mindset. Lena closed her eyes. The resident noticed Naomi. Sorry, no need, Naomi said. What is your name? Dr. Daniel Cho, first year, fourth year surgical resident. His tired face suggested the hospital had aged him more efficiently than time. Lena handed him one of the coffees. This is why I bought two. Daniel took it. He asked me to present the Mitchell case at the quality meeting. That sounds good. He is blaming me for the post-operative bleed. Lena's expression changed. You told him the patient was still hypertensive before closing. I documented it. Then why is he blaming you? Daniel looked toward Naomi, uncertain whether to continue. She gave him no reason to trust her, so he did not. Forget it, he said. We need to go. They left together. Naomi wrote 2 more notes. Staffing, quality review, retaliation. At 7:35 Richard Bellamy called. Where are you? In the cafe. You are already inside. I have learned 3 useful things. I have learned that the board chair wants almond milk, the press wants your biography, and Everett Hale has ordered a new suit for the announcement. He still thinks the job is his. He thinks every important chair is his until somebody physically occupies it. Naomi watched Daniel and Lena disappear into the staff corridor. Do not tell him yet. Naomi, I know you enjoy observation, but there is a storm, half the board is delayed, and the governor is visiting the children's wing at 9. Security will be everywhere. Governor Grant is here today, private visit. His niece finished cancer treatment last month. He asked for no press. Then we should give him no press. That sentence alone proves you are new to executive leadership. Naomi smiled. I will meet you at 10:30. Use the executive elevator. I have not found it. There was a pause. You designed emergency cardiac systems used in 80 hospitals. Yes, you cannot find an elevator. Apparently it is employees only. Richard understood. His voice lost its humor. Did someone stop you? We will discuss it later. Naomi. Later, Richard. She ended the call. At 7:47 she found the staff elevator by following a group of housekeepers. The elevator required a badge. Naomi removed her old medical credential and tapped it against the reader. Red light. Expired. A housekeeper named Sophia used her own badge to let Naomi inside. You visiting somebody upstairs? Sophia asked. I am trying to reach cardiac surgery. 4th floor. Thank you. Sophia looked at Naomi's wet sweater. They keep it freezing up there. She removed a clean folded scrub jacket from her cart. You can borrow this. Naomi accepted it. That is kind. It is cold. Sophia said it as though kindness required no explanation. Naomi wrote down her name. The 4th floor looked different from the lobby. The floors were still polished, but the walls carried the tension of people who understood that expensive medicine could still end badly. Naomi walked through the cardiac unit unnoticed. She saw a transporter kneel to explain a procedure to an elderly man who could not hear well. She saw a receptionist bring a blanket to a nervous family without being asked. She saw Lena Brooks correct a medication label before it reached a patient. She also saw Dr. Everett Hale. He entered the unit surrounded by 3 residents, an assistant and a pharmaceutical representative carrying a leather folder. Hale was 58, silver-haired and precisely handsome. His surgical cap was embroidered with his initials, his white coat had been tailored to fit, and his photograph hung on the wall behind him beside the words "Excellence without compromise." He did not greet the nurses. He did not look at the patients. He spoke while walking, and everyone around him adjusted their speed to match his. The Mitchell complication will be reviewed at noon, he told Daniel Cho. You will explain why the pressure was not controlled before closure. Daniel's face tightened. I notified you twice that the pressure remained high. Hale stopped. The unit became quieter without anyone appearing to move. Are you correcting me in the hallway? I am clarifying the record. The record is what survives the meeting. Hale stepped closer. You are a resident. I am the attending physician who allowed you to participate. You instructed me to close. I instructed you to demonstrate judgment. You said, close now. Lena Brooks stood near the medication station. Her eyes moved toward Naomi, then away. Hale smiled. It was not a friendly smile. Dr. Cho, successful surgeons do not confuse obedience with judgment after the outcome becomes inconvenient. Daniel said nothing. That is better, Hale continued. Use that silence during the quality review. He resumed walking. As he passed Naomi, he glanced at the borrowed scrub jacket. Environmental services should not be on this side of the unit during rounds. Naomi looked down at the jacket. The hospital logo was stitched above the pocket, but no department was listed. I am not with environmental services. Hale continued walking. Then find the department you are with. Naomi watched him go. Lena approached after the group disappeared. You should probably remove that jacket. Why? Because he will report Sophia for giving it to you. Naomi looked at her. How did you know Sophia gave it to me? She gives one to anybody who looks cold. Hale has threatened to write her up twice for leaving the service floor, for lending jackets, for being visible. Naomi took the notebook from her purse. Lena noticed. Are you from compliance? Would your answers change if I were? Lena looked toward the hallway where Hale had gone. They might become shorter. Naomi closed the notebook. That is also an answer. At 8:05 the storm intensified. Rain struck the windows hard enough to sound like gravel, and traffic slowed across the city. Governor Michael Grant arrived through the private entrance at 8:37. He wore no tie and carried a bouquet for his niece. His security detail included 2 state troopers, 1 driver and a protective agent named Carla Ruiz, who had served with him for 6 years. The governor's visit lasted 19 minutes. At 8:56, his motorcade left the hospital parking garage. At 8:59, a delivery truck lost control on the rain-covered ramp. The truck struck the rear security vehicle, pushed it sideways, and forced the governor's SUV into a concrete barrier. The collision happened less than 200 yards from the emergency entrance. The sound reached the hospital lobby. Naomi was on the 3rd-floor bridge when she saw the flash of brake lights below. Then she heard the emergency alert. Mass casualty response. Motor vehicle collision. South garage ramp. Doctors ran toward the emergency department. Naomi ran with them. She reached the ambulance bay as paramedics pulled Governor Grant from the crushed SUV. His shirt was soaked with blood, but no wound was visible. Agent Carla Ruiz walked beside the stretcher with blood on her forehead. He was talking after impact, she said. Then he said his chest hurt and lost consciousness. A trauma physician called for ultrasound. Naomi moved near the stretcher. The governor's neck veins were swollen, his pulse was weak, and the right side of his chest moved differently from the left. Possible cardiac tamponade, a resident said. Not with that pressure pattern, Naomi replied. Check the descending aorta and the back of the heart. The trauma physician looked at her. Who are you? Dr. Naomi Carter, cardiothoracic surgery. He looked at the borrowed scrub jacket, wet jeans, and expired badge clipped inside her coat. You are not on our call board. I am not on your staff list yet. Then step back. The ultrasound image appeared. Fluid surrounded the heart. The physician pointed. Tamponade. Naomi studied the screen. Look behind the left atrium. The physician adjusted the probe. A dark space appeared. His expression changed. Posterior rupture. Contained tear, Naomi said. Possibly from the pulmonary vein or atrial junction. If it opens fully, he has minutes. The physician called the cardiac team. Everett Hale arrived less than 3 minutes later. He entered the trauma bay already tying his surgical mask. What do we have? The trauma physician began explaining. Naomi interrupted only when he incorrectly described the location of the tear. It is posterior, she said. You cannot approach it like a standard tamponade. Hale looked at her. He recognized the woman in the borrowed jacket. You again. The CT needs delayed contrast. We do not have time. You will lose more time if you operate on the wrong anatomy. Hale turned to the trauma physician. Why is she inside the bay? She identified the posterior bleed. Hale examined the monitor. Anyone who has watched a medical program can point at a dark image. Naomi stepped closer. The governor's pressure temporarily improves when he is tilted right because the tear is being compressed between the atrium and spine. Once you open the chest, that pressure disappears. Hale stared at her. For the first time, something beyond irritation appeared in his face. She knew too much. Name? Dr. Naomi Carter. Daniel Cho, standing behind Hale, looked up sharply. He knew the name. Every cardiac resident knew the name. Before he could speak, Hale answered. "There is a Naomi Carter in Boston." There was. Hale looked at her wet sweater and muddy shoes. "You expect me to believe you are the Carter Bridge surgeon?" "I expect you to examine the patient." Hale turned away. "Prepare operating room 4. Naomi moved beside the stretcher as they pushed it toward the elevator. "You need femoral bypass access before opening the chest." "I know how to operate." "Then you know why the usual clamp is dangerous." Hale stopped the stretcher. The governor lay unconscious between them. "What exactly are you doing here? Trying to keep your patient alive?" "My patient?" Hale looked around the crowded hallway. "The woman who wandered into my department wearing a borrowed jacket is now claiming the governor is her patient." "No," Naomi said. "I am reminding you that he is not your property." The hallway went silent. Hale's face changed. Humiliation for men like Everett Hale was not being wrong. It was being challenged where other people could see. "Credential her," he ordered. A clerk took Naomi's old badge. The system rejected it. "Expired," the clerk said. "My current credential is in my purse downstairs." Hale's mouth curved. "Of course it is. I can give you my medical license number. We do not grant surgical access from memory. Call Richard Bellamy. The chief executive is in a board meeting. He will take the call." Hale leaned toward the clerk. "Get hospital security." Daniel Cho stepped forward. "Dr. Hale, I think we should verify her name." Hale turned. "Did I ask for your opinion?" "No, but Naomi Carter published the posterior bridge technique. I am aware of what she published. The injury looks exactly like the cases in her paper." Hale pointed toward the elevator. "Go prepare the operating room." Daniel hesitated. That hesitation lasted 1 second. For Daniel, it felt like the edge of a cliff. He entered the elevator. Naomi remained beside the stretcher. "Once you open his chest, you will have less than 4 minutes before the contained tear becomes uncontrolled." Hale pressed the elevator button. "I will not allow an uncredentialed stranger to create panic during a protected patient emergency." "You are not protecting him from panic." Naomi looked directly at him. "You are protecting yourself from being corrected." The elevator doors opened. Security arrived at the same moment. 2 hospital officers approached, led by a supervisor named Paul Mercer. Hale spoke loudly enough for the entire corridor. "This individual has entered restricted areas, falsely identified herself as a physician, and interfered with emergency treatment." Naomi looked at Mercer. "My name is Dr. Naomi Carter. Call the chief executive before you remove me." Mercer studied her clothing, the borrowed scrub jacket and the rejected badge in the clerk's hand. "Ma'am, you need to come with us. Make the call. Dr. Hale is the department chief, and he is wrong." Hale pushed the stretcher into the elevator. "Keep her away from the surgical floor." Naomi stepped toward the closing doors. "Establish bypass through the femoral artery before opening." Hale pressed the close button. "Goodbye, Dr. Carter." The doors shut. Mercer reached for Naomi's elbow. She moved before he touched her. "I will walk." She was escorted through the emergency department while nurses, families, and staff watched. Someone had already begun recording. The governor's crash had filled the hallway with people, and a black woman in borrowed scrubs being marched between security officers became an easy thing to misunderstand. Did she attack someone? A visitor whispered. "She pretended to be a doctor," another answered. Naomi heard both. She kept walking. At the security desk, Mercer asked for identification. Naomi opened her purse. She handed him her driver's license first. Then she removed her executive credential. The gold lettering read, "Dr. Naomi Carter, incoming Chief Medical Officer, Executive Access, all facilities." Mercer looked at the card. Then he looked at Naomi. Then he looked toward the elevator. His face lost color. "This could be fabricated," the younger officer beside him said. Naomi gave him a tired look. "Call the number on the back." Mercer turned the card over. A direct verification line was printed beneath the hospital seal. He made the call. The executive office answered immediately. Mercer identified himself, read the credential number, and listened. His shoulders lowered. "Yes, ma'am," he said into the phone. "She is standing in front of me." He handed the phone to Naomi. Richard Bellamy's voice came through sharp and breathless. "Naomi, where are you?" "Security desk outside, emergency." "Why?" "Everett Hale removed me from the governor's case." Silence, not confusion, silence. Tell me exactly what happened. I identified a posterior atrial tear. I advised femoral bypass before opening. He refused to verify my identity and accused me of impersonating a physician. Is Grant in surgery? Yes. Does Hale know the Carter Bridge? He has read it. That was not my question. No, Naomi heard movement on Richard's end. I am coming down. Bring the board chair. Naomi, should I stop the surgery? Not yet. Moving the governor now could kill him. She looked at the clock. But activate the command center and open the operating room feed. St. Catherine recorded major operations for quality review and teaching. The system could be viewed live only by authorized executives during emergencies. Richard understood. What are you expecting? Naomi looked toward the elevator. A mistake he will not recognize until the monitors explain it. On the surgical floor, operating room 4 was being prepared faster than any room in the hospital's history. News of the governor's injury had reached the staff. No one spoke above a murmur. Lena Brooks stood at the instrument table. Daniel Cho was placing lines for bypass access, but Hale stopped him. We are not wasting time on full femoral preparation. Daniel looked up. Dr. Carter specifically warned. She is not Dr. Carter. What if she is? Hale stepped closer. Then she can publish another article about it. Lena looked toward Daniel. He continued preparing the groin area anyway. Hale noticed. What are you doing? Creating an emergency option. You are delaying the incision by less than 2 minutes. Hale held out his hand. Scalpel. Lena did not move. Dr. Hale, we do not have bypass access. I did not ask what we do not have. Lena gave him the scalpel. The incision began. Outside the room, Naomi arrived with Richard Bellamy, board chair Evelyn Ross, and security supervisor Mercer. Richard had returned Naomi's executive badge. The surgical doors remained locked. Naomi watched the live monitor. Where is the bypass line? Richard looked at the screen. I do not know what I am looking at. It is not there. She called the operating room. Lena answered through the wall phone. This is Carter. Has femoral access been established? Lena looked toward Hale. He shook his head. Not complete, Lena said. Do not open the pericardium until it is. Hale grabbed the phone. You have been removed from this case. Hale listened carefully. Naomi watched his face on the monitor. The posterior tissue is containing the rupture. Once you release that pressure, you will have seconds, not minutes. I am looking directly at the heart. And I am looking directly at the pattern that killed the first 3 patients before this procedure existed. Hale's eyes shifted. The room heard her. She knew the history of the technique in a way no impersonator could. Verify her, Daniel said quietly. Hale placed the phone back on the wall. Proceed. He opened the pericardium. The pressure changed immediately. Blood surged into the field. The governor's pressure dropped. Massive posterior bleed, Lena said. Hale inserted suction. Clamp. Daniel looked at the injury. The tear extends behind the atrium. Clamp. Standard placement could split the upper margin. Hale turned toward him. Dr. Cho, hand me the clamp. Daniel did not move. The room felt the hesitation. Hale took the clamp himself. Outside, Naomi pressed the intercom. Do not place it above the tear. Hale ignored her. The bridge must go below the junction while bypass is initiated from the leg. He placed the clamp. For 1 second the bleeding slowed. Then the tissue behind the heart split. The arterial line flattened. The monitor alarm filled the room. No pressure, the anesthesiologist shouted. Blood spread across Hale's gloves. Suction. We are losing output. More blood. His heart is empty. Daniel looked at Hale. The tear extended. Hale's hand stopped. He stared into the open chest. For the first time in his career, the people around him saw something he had never allowed them to see. Fear. Outside the doors, Naomi lifted the executive badge to the security panel. The light turned green. Richard caught her arm before she entered. Can you save him? Naomi looked through the glass. I can try. She entered the scrub area. Hale heard the outer door open. You cannot come in here. Naomi removed her sweater. Underneath, she wore a black t-shirt. Emergency executive privilege is active. That does not make you credentialed for this operation. Richard Bellamy's voice came through the intercom. She is credentialed at every hospital in this system, effective immediately. Hale looked toward the speaker. Richard continued. For the benefit of everyone in that room, Dr. Naomi Carter was appointed Chief Medical Officer 11 days ago. Nobody moved. Lena Brooks stared at Naomi. Daniel closed his eyes for half a second as though the confirmation relieved something deeper than curiosity. Hale looked from the speaker to Naomi. You planned this. I planned a hospital tour. You concealed your position. I gave you my name. You came dressed like. He stopped. Naomi waited. Finish that sentence, she said. The governor's monitor screamed again. Naomi turned toward the sink. We can discuss your assumptions if he survives them. She scrubbed her hands. Hale remained near the operating table. This is my room. Naomi looked at Richard through the window. Is the chief executive authorizing a change in surgical command? Richard answered immediately. Yes. Board Chair Evelyn Ross stepped toward the intercom. The board confirms it. Naomi entered the room in sterile gear. Dr. Hale stepped away from the table. He did not move. Everett, Lena said quietly, step away. The use of his first name seemed to reach him. Hale took one step back. Naomi approached the open chest. Daniel, how much access did you establish? Right femoral artery exposed, line not inserted. Good decision. She examined the tear. He extended into the superior pulmonary vein. Daniel looked at the monitor. No pressure. We do not need pressure yet. We need flow. Naomi's voice changed. It became faster, sharper, and absolute. Daniel, insert the femoral cannula. Lena, prepare the flexible bridge tube and 2 pleated sutures. Anesthesia, lower the temperature 2 degrees and give me the exact time of arrest. 42 seconds. Call every 30 seconds. Hale watched. Naomi did not ask him to leave. She made him witness what came next. Daniel inserted the line. Blood began moving through the bypass circuit. Flow at 30%, the perfusionist said. Take it to 60. The tear is too high, Daniel said. I know. Naomi placed 2 fingers behind the heart. We are going under it. There is no space. There is always space before death. Sometimes it is just smaller than we want. Lena placed the flexible tube into Naomi's hand. Naomi guided it beneath the damaged vessel. Blood obscured the field. 2 minutes, anesthesia called. Flow at 70. Hold there. Naomi turned to Daniel. When I lift, you pass the bridge beneath the vein and do not release it until I say. Daniel swallowed. I have never performed this. You have read it. Yes. Then your hands know more than your fear. She lifted the heart. Now, Daniel passed the bridge. Too shallow, Naomi said. Again. The monitor remained flat. 2 minutes 30. Daniel repositioned. Now, advance half a centimeter. I cannot see the edge. Feel the resistance. He moved the tube. There. Naomi secured the first suture. The bleeding slowed. Flow rising, the perfusionist said. 3 minutes. Naomi placed the second suture. Release the lower pressure. Daniel followed. The field cleared enough to see the repair. A faint rhythm appeared on the monitor. Everyone looked up. 1 beat, then another. The governor's heart began to move. Pressure returning, anesthesia said. No one celebrated. The repair was not finished. Naomi worked for another 27 minutes. She reconstructed the torn vein, reinforced the atrial wall, and slowly reduced the bypass support. At 9:52, the governor's heart was beating without mechanical assistance. Naomi looked at the monitor. Stable, stable, anesthesia confirmed. Only then did she step back. The room exhaled together. Hale stood against the wall. His gloves were still red. Naomi removed hers. You nearly killed him, Hale said. Everyone turned. The sentence was so disconnected from reality that for a moment no one understood who he meant. Naomi looked at him. You want that to be the first thing you say. You disrupted the room, challenged authority, and created hesitation during a critical procedure. Daniel stared at him. Lena's mouth opened slightly. Hale continued because stopping would require him to hear himself. If you had identified your role immediately, none of this confusion would have happened. Naomi walked toward him. She stopped close enough that he had to look directly at her. I gave you my full name. You did not show credentials. I offered my license number. You were dressed inappropriately. I described the injury. You interfered with my judgment. I warned you about the exact complication you created. Hale's jaw tightened. Naomi lowered her voice. You did not need my title to hear the warning. The room became silent. You needed professional judgment, curiosity, and enough humility to verify what you did not know. She looked toward the governor. He almost died because a black woman gave you information and you decided her clothes were more credible than her words. Hale glanced at the staff. The witnesses made the sentence unbearable. This is not about race. Naomi nodded slowly. That is convenient. You are accusing me because you want my position. I already have a position above yours. Hale had no answer. Naomi stepped away. That is also not why this matters. She turned to Richard behind the glass. Secure the recording, the door access log, the emergency department footage, and every written statement before anyone discusses the event. Hale removed his mask. You are suspending me. I am preserving evidence. I have operated here for 22 years. Then you know why evidence matters. I saved thousands of lives, and today you endangered one because you could not tolerate being corrected. Naomi looked at Lena. Who is qualified to complete the closure? Lena answered. Dr. Cho has completed 47 supervised closures. Daniel looked surprised. Hale had never allowed that number to be spoken as an achievement. Naomi nodded. Dr. Cho will close under my supervision. Hale stepped forward. He is not ready. Daniel looked at him. Naomi looked at the repair, then at Daniel. Are you ready? Daniel took a breath. Yes, then close. Hale was escorted from the operating room at 10:02. No one grabbed him. No one shouted. He was asked to remove his cap, surrender his badge, and walk through the same corridor where Naomi had been escorted less than an hour earlier. Staff members watched from both sides. The difference was that no one assumed Hale had attacked anyone. They already knew exactly what he had done. At the elevator, he looked toward Naomi through the glass. She was standing beside Daniel while he closed the governor's chest. Hale had spent years believing the hospital could not function without him. The doors closed on the first evidence that it could. Governor Grant was transferred to intensive care in stable but critical condition. His family was informed. The public was told only that he had undergone emergency surgery after the crash. Outside the hospital, reporters gathered behind barriers. Inside, St. Catherine's board meeting moved from the executive conference room to the incident command center. The press conference announcing Naomi's appointment was canceled. Naomi entered the command room at 11:18, still wearing surgical scrubs. Richard Bellamy offered her a jacket. She declined. Evelyn Ross, the board chair, sat at the head of the table. We need to decide what we are saying publicly, Evelyn said. We tell the governor's family the full truth first. They know you completed the procedure. They need to know why I had to. Richard looked toward the hospital attorney. The attorney folded her hands. If we disclose that Hale ignored a warning, removed Dr. Carter, and caused the extension of the tier, we are creating enormous liability. Naomi sat down. The liability already exists. We do not need to describe it in those terms. What terms would you prefer? A difference in surgical judgment. Daniel Cho was seated near the wall. He looked down. Naomi noticed. Dr. Cho, what happened? Every executive turned toward him. Daniel looked at Hale's former supervisors, board members, and lawyers. He had spent 4 years learning what happened to residents who spoke inconvenient truths. Naomi waited. Hale was warned not to use the standard clamp, Daniel said. He used it anyway. The attorney wrote something. Were there competing reasonable approaches? No. Are you qualified to determine that? Daniel's voice weakened. I am a resident. Naomi interrupted. That was not the question. She looked at Daniel. Are you qualified to recognize the complication? Yes. Did you recognize it before the clamp was placed? Yes. Did you speak? Yes. Were you ignored? Daniel looked at the table. Yes. Naomi turned toward the attorney. That is the answer. Evelyn Ross studied Naomi. What do you recommend? Immediate suspension of Everett Hale pending an external clinical review. External. He cannot be investigated only by people who benefited from his reputation. Richard leaned back. That will leak. It should. The attorney looked up. You are proposing we publicly expose our own failure. I am proposing we determine how large the failure is before someone else does it for us. What makes you think it is larger than today? Naomi opened her notebook. She read the notes she had made before the crash. Mandatory overtime, retaliatory quality reviews, residents silenced, nurses ignored, complaints disappearing. Then she placed her mother's visitor card on the table. This morning was not caused by one bad decision. She looked around the room. It was caused by a system that taught one man he was too valuable to question, and taught everyone around him that speaking carried more risk than silence. Chief Operating Officer Martin Kessler shifted in his seat. He had overseen Hale's department for 8 years. We have reviewed every formal complaint against Dr. Hale. Naomi looked at him. How many? Several. How many? Kessler glanced toward Human Resources. 7 over the last 5 years. Daniel looked up. Lena Brooks, invited as the senior nurse witness, stared at Kessler. Naomi noticed both reactions. You believe there were more, she said. Lena hesitated. Naomi waited. Nurses do not always file formally, Lena said. Why? Because the complaint goes to department leadership. Hale, sometimes. And when it does not? Lena looked at Kessler. The room understood. Naomi closed the notebook. Pull every complaint, draft complaint, withdrawn complaint, internal transfer request, resignation interview and quality review dispute involving cardiac surgery for the last 7 years. Kessler shook his head. That is thousands of pages. Then we should begin reading. We have a public crisis. Naomi looked through the command center glass toward the intensive care elevators. A man is alive because several people acted after being ignored. She returned her attention to Kessler. The public crisis is not that the truth may come out. The crisis is that you appear frightened to look for it. The external review began that afternoon. Naomi removed herself from the disciplinary panel because she was both a witness and the person Hale had targeted. She appointed Dr. Samuel Bennett, a retired trauma surgeon with no connection to St. Catherine, to lead the clinical investigation. The remaining panel included a nursing safety specialist, a labor attorney, a patient advocate, and a medical ethicist. They started with the operation. The video left little room for interpretation. Hale had been warned 5 times. Naomi warned him twice in the emergency department, once in the elevator corridor, and twice through the operating room communication system. Daniel Cho warned him before the incision. Lena Brooks delayed handing him the scalpel. The imaging showed the posterior tear. Hale opened without bypass preparation. Then he used the exact clamp placement Naomi had said would extend the rupture. The panel timed the moment between the clamp and cardiovascular collapse. 3 seconds. Next came the security footage. It showed Naomi offering her identity, license number, and a direct call to the chief executive. It showed Hale refusing every verification method. It showed security escorting her through the emergency department while visitors recorded. One video had already reached social media. The caption read, "Woman pretends to be surgeon during governor emergency." By noon the following day, it had 5 million views. Most comments mocked Naomi. Some called her unstable. Others claimed she had used the governor's injury to gain attention. The hospital had not yet identified her because the governor's family requested privacy during the first 24 hours. Naomi watched 10 seconds of the video and turned it off. Richard stood in her temporary office. "We can release your name. Not until the family approves the surgical details. People are attacking you. They are attacking a version of me invented by incomplete footage. That does not bother you. It bothers my daughter." Maya had seen the clip at school. A classmate asked whether her mother had been arrested. Another said Naomi probably lied about being a doctor. Maya responded by opening the hospital website and showing them Naomi's research biography. The biography page crashed from traffic 15 minutes later. Naomi had arrived home at 9:30 the previous night. The science fair was over. Maya's volcano had won 3rd place. Naomi found the ribbon on the kitchen table. She found Maya asleep on the couch, still wearing her school uniform. The television played silent footage from outside St. Catherine. Marcus sat nearby. "She waited until 8, he said. "I tried to call. You were operating, I promised." Marcus looked at his sister. "You saved the governor." "I still promised." He nodded toward Maya. "She knows both things can be true." Naomi sat beside her daughter. Maya opened her eyes. "Is he alive?" "Yes." "Did your system work?" Naomi thought about the question. "The procedure worked." "That is not what I asked." Naomi looked at Marcus. He lifted both hands. "She gets the direct questions from you." Naomi removed the 3rd place ribbon from the table. "The system failed first." Maya sat up. "Are you going to fix it?" "Yes." Then you can come to the next science fair." Naomi smiled sadly. "You are not angry." "I am angry.